Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the 2024 United States Senate elections. And before I start, I'd like to say if you like my content, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you know when we upload, and also leave a like and comment. With that said, let's get into it. So, I'm going to start by filling out all these solid Democrat states. So, those are going to be the states of Washington. We're going to come back to California, New Mexico, Hawaii, Minnesota, because Amy Klobuchar is very popular there. She won by 20 something points in 2018. It's not going to be that much of a blowout. I do still think she's going to win by more than 10. Virginia, for similar reasons with Tim Kaine. Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and also Vermont and Maine, even though they are both independents. They caucus with the Democrats, and so I'm just going to fill them in as Democrats here. And I said I would come back to California because California, I am going to fill in as solid Democrat, but there is theoretically a way that a Republican could get elected here, even though it's California. And that's because California's primary system is a jungle primary system. And so you have a bunch of candidates from both parties running on the same ballot, and the top two make it from the primary into the general election. And there's technically a way where if Republicans ran two candidates and Democrats ran a bunch of candidates that equally split the vote, that you could have two Republicans make it to the general election. And that is basically impossible to happen, but it is theoretically possible. So I thought I'd mention it just because I think it's kind of funny. And so those are all the solid Democrat states. So I'm going to fill in the solid Republican states now. Those are North Dakota, both Nebraska and Nebraska special election, Wyoming, Utah, even though Mitt Romney maybe will face a primary challenge, Missouri, Tennessee, Mississippi, Indiana, and I'm going to add West Virginia to this column, even though West Virginia is held by a Democrat, Joe Manchin, right now. Jim Justice recently announced that he is entering the Senate race, and he has very high approval rating in the state of West Virginia, way higher than Joe Manchin. I think he's actually even more popular among Democrats than Joe Manchin is. So I think even if Manchin runs, Justice is probably going to beat him by 20 plus points. So I am calling West Virginia a safe Republican. So those are all of the solid Republican and Democrat states. We have Republicans at 48 and Democrats at 43. So now I'm going to fill in the likely Democrat states, or I guess I should say likely Democrat state, because there's only one, and that is the state of Pennsylvania. Right now, this seat is held by Bob Casey Jr., and he is very popular, especially for a state like Pennsylvania, which is kind of in the middle. So he's probably going to win, even if Republicans end up putting up a good candidate against him. And even that's not really even certain right now because it looks like Doug Mastriano, who recently just lost the governor race in Pennsylvania by 15 points last November, is running for Senate. If Mastriano does end up getting the Republican nomination, I would probably automatically move this race to solid Democrat. But truthfully, at the moment, I don't think he is going to win the nomination. I think Pennsylvania Republicans have probably learned their lesson from nominating him. And even Trump, who endorsed Mastriano in the Republican primary for governor last year, has basically said that he is not going to endorse Mastriano this time because he thinks that he will probably drag him down in the state of Pennsylvania. The most likely person to win the primary at this point is Dave McCormick, in my opinion. And even then, I still think he probably loses by 6 or 7 to Casey, so I am calling Pennsylvania likely Democrat. Next up, I'm going to fill in the only likely Republican state, and that's going to be the state of Florida. Florida, of course, is a rightward trending state, and Rick Scott is a fairly popular senator. In 2018, he beat an incumbent, Bill Nelson, who was fairly popular in a blue wave year. So I think he's going to be able to hang on fairly easily. I think he's probably going to win by close to 10 points, but just a little bit under. So I am calling this one likely Republican. So those are all the solid and likely states filled in. Republicans are starting at 49 and Democrats are starting at 44. I'm going to cover all these toss-ups now, going from west to east, starting with the state of Nevada. So I recently talked about this in my last presidential election video, which I uploaded a couple days ago, which you should all check out. I'll put an iCard in the top right corner. But Nevada is trending towards Republicans. Ever since 2008, in every presidential election, it has shifted more and more Republican. In 2022, Republicans came just short of flipping the Nevada Senate seat in the Class 3 Senate seats, but Republicans did pick off Steve Sisolak and elect a Republican governor in Joe Lombardo. So that does go to show that Republicans can win in Nevada under the right circumstances and with the right candidates. At the moment, we know that Democratic Senator Jackie Rosen is running for a second term, and we don't really know who's going to run on the Republican side, so it is hard to say who's going to win here. And at the moment, I do think that Trump is going to lose the state of Nevada. So the Republican here is probably going to have to outrun Trump to defeat their Democratic opponent in Jackie Rosen. mostly because of the uncertainty. I am going to be calling Nevada tilt Democrat at this moment, but I do think that this is a race that Republicans could flip if they put enough effort into it. Next up is going to be the state of Arizona. So, late last year, incumbent Democrat Kyrsten Sinema announced that she was switching from Democrat to independent, but she was still going to caucus with the Democrats. And so it does seem like she's doing that because she's not super popular among Democrats and she wants to run for re-election. So that's probably going to lead to a three-way race here in Arizona between a Democrat, a Republican, and Sinema. And so with just that information in mind, you would think that a Republican would be favored here because Sinema would split the vote kind of with a Democrat. But recently, Arizona Republicans haven't been doing very well, and they haven't really been nominating the greatest candidates. So I think that Sinema will actually end up taking more moderate Republicans away. And I think that most Democrats will probably coalesce around one candidate. So I actually think Democrats are favored in the Arizona election by a couple points. So I am calling Arizona lean Democrat. Next up, I'm going to talk about the state of Montana. Right now, Montana has a Democratic incumbent in Jon Tester, and Republicans are really looking to flip Montana because if they want to take the Senate back, Montana and West Virginia are probably the two most likely seats to do that if they hold everything else. And Jon Tester is pretty popular here, but so was Bill Nelson in Florida in 2018, and we saw what happened to him. So just because someone is leading in popularity polls 2 years away from an election does not mean that they are favored to win. After all, Montana is a very Republican state. Donald Trump won the state by 15 points in 2020. And even if he regresses in the state in 2024, he'll still probably win it by double digits, which means Jon Tester will have to outrun Joe Biden by double digits if he wants to win this election. Right now, it looks like Matt Rosendale is probably the most likely Republican nominee. And Matt Rosendale did lose to Jon Tester in 2018 by a margin of 3.5 points. But back then, Matt Rosendale was not as known as he is now, and he was probably a lot less popular as a result. Also, 2018 was a blue wave year because it was Donald Trump's midterm election. And so the national vote ended up being D+9, and Jon Tester still only won by 3.5 against kind of an unknown candidate who is now a congressman. So even if Matt Rosendale is one of the weaker candidates to put up against Tester, I still think he's going to win. I think he's going to win by a couple points, or whoever the Republican is will probably win by a kind of high lean margin, probably like 4 or 5 points against Tester. So I am calling Montana lean Republican for now. Next up is going to be the state of Texas. The state of Texas is a state that Democrats keep hoping will flip, but it just never budges. It has been trending towards Democrats, but at a very slow rate. And Ted Cruz did almost lose to Beto O'Rourke in 2018. But Cruz did still win by almost 3 points, and that was against Beto O'Rourke, who at the time was a very good candidate. He came off as very moderate, and it was a blue wave year. That, along with Ted Cruz's unpopularity because he ran for president, kind of made Texas a very close race that year. A lot of those factors are not at play this time, so I do think Ted Cruz is going to win, probably by like 4 or 5 points, so I am calling Texas lean Republican. Cruz does have a Democratic challenger in Congressman Colin Allred, and it's possible that he will be able to do pretty similarly to Beto if he runs a perfect campaign, but even then, I just don't see Texas flipping in 2024. Next up, we're going to talk about the state of Wisconsin, and in Wisconsin, they have a Democratic incumbent currently, Tammy Baldwin. And Baldwin's favorabilities aren't that great, but she is kind of sticking to a good message currently if she wants to win, and she is working with J.D. Vance, I think, on some bipartisan issues right now. It's still early, and Republicans could find someone to beat Baldwin, but at the moment, I do still think she's going to hang on by a couple points, so I'm calling Wisconsin lean Democrat. Moving on to the state of Michigan. Michigan is currently held by Debbie Stabenow, who is a Democrat, but she announced a couple months ago that she's going to be retiring. And the Democratic field has already kind of cleared for Alyssa Slotkin to run for the Democratic nomination. The popular opinion right now is that Democrats are going to hold this seat, but I think that if Republicans find the right candidate, they could flip it. Last time a Senate election was up in Michigan during a presidential year was 2020, and that ended up being a very close race. I think it was decided by less than 2 points. And that was against an incumbent. That was Gary Peters, and John James came within a couple points of him. So I don't think it's totally far-fetched to say that Republicans could flip this seat because Democrats in Michigan tend to underperform, or I guess it's more like Republicans in Michigan tend to outperform Donald Trump. So if Trump gets this state close enough, you could see the Senate seat flip. And there are a couple potential candidates that could run for this seat. John James is one of them, even though he was just elected to Congress, so I don't think he's going to run, but he potentially could. Also, Bill Huizenga, who is another congressman from Michigan, I think could run for this seat. Now, the problem here for Republicans is that right now it looks like Steve Daines, who is the NRSC chairman, is looking at John Tuttle for this nomination, and he's the vice chair of the New York Stock Exchange. And honestly, in my opinion, even though he'd be able to self fund, I think that would be a horrible fit for Michigan, and it would almost be like Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania all over again. It's kind of like a carpetbagger coming to the state just to run for Senate. I don't think that would go well at all. So I think Republicans' best shot right now is Bill Huizenga, and until any more developments happen in this race, I am comfortable calling Michigan lean Democrat, but I do still think Republicans have a chance in this seat. Finally, we have the state of Ohio, which is currently held by a Democrat, Sherrod Brown. Of the three Trump 2020 states that are up in the Senate in 2024, West Virginia, Montana, and Ohio, Ohio was the closest one, voting for Trump by a margin of 8 points. And Donald Trump probably is still going to win Ohio by a large margin in 2024, but Sherrod Brown, who is running for re-election, is going to have to overcome a smaller gap between him and Joe Biden than the other candidates would have to. Like Manchin would have to overcome like a 40-point gap, and Tester, like I mentioned, would have to overcome a 15-point gap maybe. And so that makes Democrats' prospects in Ohio a lot better than these other two seats, in my opinion. The last time Sherrod Brown was elected was in 2018, like the rest of these seats, and he won by a margin of 7 points. But again, 2018 was a blue wave in the Trump midterm. And the Republican nominee in this race kind of gave up a couple months before the election. He just stopped campaigning and stopped trying. So it's likely that if he had kept campaigning, he probably wouldn't have won, but it would have been a lot closer. Personally, I think that Sherrod Brown is probably going to lose very narrowly against whoever is put up against him. There are some pretty good Republican candidates who are running, and it's possible that there are some bad candidates who are going to run and possibly win the nomination. So this one is still up in the air, but right now I do think Brown is probably going to lose very narrowly, so I am calling Ohio tilt Republican. And with that, we have the full Senate map complete. Republicans at 52 and Democrats at 48. Republicans are netting 3 seats here, picking up West Virginia, Montana, and Ohio, and holding everything else that they already had. This map is honestly so favorable for Republicans that if they manage to not pick up the Senate in 2024, regardless of who's elected president, that's just extremely embarrassing. On this map, you have 3 states that voted for Donald Trump twice, which I have all 3 of them flipping. But you also have states that got really close in 2020 and voted for him once, like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Arizona, and Nevada, which got really close and has been trending towards Republicans. So if Republicans manage to not pick up 2 of these seats, all of these that are up, that's just honestly kind of impressive, but also extremely embarrassing. Of course, we've seen Republicans blow great Senate odds before, like in 2022, and honestly also in 2020. But right now, I do think 2024 is going to be the year where they take it back. But with all that said, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you know when we upload. And also leave a comment, tell me what you agree with, what you disagree with, and how I can improve these videos. And also leave a like if you liked the video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day.